Hey everyone, are we live? Welcome to the Little School of Big Change Q&A. I'm gonna just share a little bit about the school, and if you join live, if you're coming on live, if you have any questions at all, anything you want me to say more about, or anything at all, just pop it in the comments, and I'll speak to all your questions. So I'll just kick us off by saying a little bit about the school, just to kind of get the ball rolling. And I have been sent quite a few questions, not a ton, but some questions. So you can always just kind of, if you're curious, just kind of listen in to those and see if yours is answered. So the Little School of Big Change, the fall course begins September 28th. And if you aren't familiar with it, the school is a 6-week course that is highly interactive, highly supportive. It's led by me, and hi, Adrian. And it's 6 weeks, and I lead it twice a year. And so the fall 2020 course will be the last time this year, and then I'll lead it sometime in the spring of 2021. And so the school has been around for about 3.5 years, and it's uh, it's hard for me to talk about at times because I'm so close to it. Um, but it is a full curriculum that was created, designed, tested like crazy. Now thousands of people have been through it. That is designed to really deeply walk people through an understanding of who we are and how our experience comes to life. Hi, Sally. I'll speak to that in a minute here. Um, so so it's a set curriculum, and as a group, as an amazing group, because there's always an amazing group of people that gather. As a group, we go through this curriculum from start to finish, and you're supported the whole way through. So it's 6 weeks long. You get about an hour of content each week, of like video lessons and content like that. There's animations, there are calls with other people, with some of my colleagues. There's a lot of me talking and sharing how I see this, and really kind of pointing in a direct way and teaching you to see yourself and your experience in this way. And then, in addition to the lessons, to the about 1 hour per week of content of the curriculum, we have 2 group calls each week, and those are 90 minutes each. So we're together live for at least, I say at least because we usually go over a little bit, at least 3 hours every single week. And on those calls, what happens is we go deeper into the content from that week. I answer questions. We just, I bring it to life in different ways that I didn't maybe in the curriculum, just kind of helping us see everything that's being shared more deeply. And then I turn it over and I do a ton of coaching. And it's amazing because we have lots of people that show up on those calls, and people just share, what they're seeing, what they're struggling with. And the coaching is beneficial, obviously, to the person who's being coached. But what I love so much about this format and the school in general and just how this works is that the people watching, so all of you, as you're seeing someone else being coached and watching them wake up to seeing themselves and their issues in a brand new way, you benefit so much by just being witness to that. So what I'm saying is watching other people being coached is maybe one of the most beneficial things I've seen, honestly. Sometimes it's not uncommon that many times that's actually more beneficial than you being coached, because when you're coached, it's you. It's your life. You have a ton of thinking around whatever you're caught up in, you know, and you're trying to be open and listen to me, and you're trying, and there's just so much going on. But what happens is when we get, a bunch of people on a group call and you see me go deep with someone else, maybe who has a similar struggle as you have, or maybe something completely different, you have nothing on it. You're just sitting back, listening, watching, no big deal. And in that, you tend to see so much. It's like all your defenses are down, all your personal thinking is just out of the way. And I can't tell you how often people say, oh my gosh, watching this person speak up about their anxiety or their shopping habit or their binge eating habit or just how badly they feel in the pandemic or whatever it was, watching them wake up to how their mind is creating those issues and how they're really okay beneath it was so helpful for me. I didn't even realize that I had thinking like that too, or whatever it is. It's like, it's just so incredibly helpful. So, um, I think I cannot say enough about the community school kind of come together group aspect of this. And it is a question I get all the time about, I think I need personal coaching, or maybe I should do private coaching rather than go through the school. And, everyone's different. You have to do what feels right to you. But I truly see that in so many cases, it is more beneficial to go through a curriculum like this and look in a direction that's looking at what's universal and what's true of all people, and then seeing people just like you wake up to this all around you and watching them being coached through it. It makes it less about us, and that's a good thing. That's an incredibly helpful thing. Sometimes when we're just in conversation all about us, we can feel like we're the only ones, or where we get caught up in the details more and more. In a setting like this, you so quickly start to see, wow, we're all the same. We all work in the same way. We're all up against things that look different on the surface, for sure. The surface level of things looks really different for each and every one of us. But just below the surface level, just below how the issue is showing up, the issue is we're caught up in thinking that we think is real, we think is true. We've lost, we've lost, not really lost because we can't lose it, but we aren't falling into who we truly are. We're looking over here at a repetitive thought or behavior saying this needs to stop, this needs to end, and we're so focused on something that looks like the problem. And all we need to have a shift and to see things differently is to come back to us and see all of that in a different way. And so the entire design of the school and it being a group thing and all of that is for that purpose. It's all about that. So we go through this curriculum together. There's a core curriculum and then an advanced curriculum that takes things even deeper. It was very much created with me saying, okay, at this point, when I created it a few years ago, I'd worked with thousands of people one to one. Like, how do people wake up to this little by little? Like, what's the path and where do they have questions, and then what comes up? And after having worked with so many people privately in that way, I could see patterns. I had a pretty good idea of how people were going to wake up to this, little by little. And so it just follows that. And yeah, and then again, we meet and we interact and you get all the support you could ever need. So on the support side of things, because this is another kind of thing about group courses and things like that at times, that it seems like, oh, I'm just a student amongst, a bunch of other students, and I might not get the kind of personal support that I need. It's really important to me that you do, and I think I can honestly say that, and I think this is true, in that every single 6-week course of the Little School of Big Change that I've ever taught, I don't think there's been an unanswered question. I really don't. I don't think there's been a person who wanted some support or some coaching or just wanted to hear more about something that hasn't gotten that. And I'll tell you how that works a little bit. We have the 2 group calls each week. So I go through who's there and we talk and we do as much as you need. And we also have a private forum. It's not on Facebook. It's just our own very secure private forum within our website, where myself and 3 other coaches, 2 or 3 other coaches, Amanda Jones has been with me since the minute the school started, so she's in there all the time, and I have some other moderators who are trained coaches as well. We're in there around the clock, and I kind of mean that literally. Don't hold me to someone being there at 4 in the morning ready to answer your question, but it's not uncommon. We have people from 43 countries have gone through the Little School of Big Change, so we're used to working with lots of time zones, and we're there all the time speaking to whatever comes up on that forum. What we also do is at the beginning of each week, so before we go into our live calls, I start a thread on the forum for people to ask questions for me to speak to on the calls, specifically if you can't be on the calls live. So if you can't be on the calls live, like let's say every Tuesday you have a work meeting when we have our call, it's not a problem at all. Many, many people are in this kind of situation. So what you do is you post all your questions on that forum, in that thread. And if there's time on the actual live call, I speak to it there. And then you watch the recording when you have a chance on your own time. And if I don't get to it in the call, if we're running way over and I don't get to it on the call, what I do is I make a video. So every week I'll have anywhere from 5 to 55 questions that I didn't have time to get to live on the calls, and I just make a video like this and I speak to every single one of them. So it's a really great setup that, again, for that I don't see a lot of places, that for being in a live group course that, you know, has a decent number of people in it each time, you don't feel like it. You get every single question you have answered, and there's always going to be opportunities for you to have coaching if you want it. Again, a lot of people like to kind of just listen. They get so much from watching other people being coached, and they don't really feel like they need it as much. All right, let me take a pause. There's so much I could say, but let me take a pause and peek over at the comments and see if there's some questions. So good to see people. Okay, so Adrienne asks, is there self-paced activities like journaling, etc. in the school? There is not. There's no homework. So your homework, if you want, like the self-paced piece of it, Adrienne, is that each Friday throughout the entire course, that week's content unlocks. It opens up for you. So you'll watch the videos that are there. Everything is in video or audio, downloadable audio format. So some people, like me, I can't sit in front of a computer any more than I already do, which is a lot. So if I do a course like this, I want to download the audio and take it on a walk. So you can do that. There's lots of ways to get the information. But basically the self-paced part is that you take in that hour of content each week. And then you just come on the forum as much or as little as you want. So some people watch the videos and they're just full of questions, or they just want to dive into it more deeply and be in conversation with other people about it. So you do that, and you could spend 6 weeks on that forum and you'll have lots of people talking back with you. So that's an option. Now, not to freak you out, there are other people who think, forum schmorum, like I don't want to sit on a forum all day. Again, I'm going to take these lessons and go do it at my own time and do this at my own pace. Absolutely fine. Absolutely wonderful. And really the school was created to be adaptable to that, because I knew when I built this thing that it was going to be a global community, that we were going to have a million time zones to deal with, that I wanted people from all over the world in it. That has happened over the years, which is pretty amazing. And that, you know, people have lives, like you guys work and we do things. So sitting on 3 hours of live calls every week is not going to be an option for some people. But again, everything is recorded. So you can listen. A lot of people can't make the live calls, or they can't make every one of them, but like after work on their commute home, they'll listen to that day's live call. Everything is recorded and posted right away. So in that way, there's a lot of things that you can self-pace, but you can also do it in a more guided way if you want to. And I should mention that everything, all the content in the school is yours to keep for life. So that's incredibly important to me. People always tell me not to do that, and I say I'm doing it. People, meaning like my website people, who are like, how are we going to store all this for life? We'll figure it out, but we're giving it for life, because what happens is you go through this curriculum during the 6-week course, and then inevitably you want a refresher, or you want to go back later, or 6 months later, or a year later, or 5 years later. You're thinking like, man, I just want to hear that stuff again, or I wonder if I'd hear it differently now. And people go through it again and they hear it differently. It's incredible. And I know many of you who are listening to this have been around this understanding a bit, and you know what that's like. Like we hear things initially at the level at which we can hear them. Perfect, right? We get what we can get the first time through. And as we change, as our grounding changes and our thinking changes, and we come to see things in a really different way, we go back through and think, whoa, did they replace all of these videos? Like, this sounds completely different. And it's amazing that it works that way, but it does. So as we deepen, we just hear and see new things the whole way through. So I also say that to say that there's no rush, because sometimes people will say, um, I'd love to not have to wait for 6 months to do this. I don't want to have to wait till the spring, but this fall's busy, or I already know I'm going to have to miss some calls or whatever. Of course. I mean, of course you are. It's okay. But that's part of the reason why everything is yours and nothing's being ripped away by any date, except the forum. We do take the forum away, but we give you an alternative. I'm not going to say much about that now, but all of that content, the calls, all of that are yours, so you don't have to feel rushed to take anything in. But there is no like journaling, homework, that kind of thing. It's more an understanding where we just explore together. We look in this direction together. I ask a lot of questions, a lot of prompts. I have you consider a lot of things like, what if this is really how we work? What if we truly are undamageable? What if we truly, anything that moves through us always has to move through, and we are untainted by it, undinged by it the whole time? Like we do that kind of stuff. We explore so that you have insights. It's all about you deeply, insightfully coming to see things in a way that means something to you. So it's not about what I'm saying or how I'm sharing it, or none of that is important. I'm just sharing in the way that I've seen over time be the way that helps the most people in general relax and have their own insights. Now, what you'll get from that, the insights you'll get, who knows? But that's the fun of it. That's what we're here to explore and get curious about and see. And it's so interesting because often people come in because they want to see something around a habit they have, or some anxiety, or some mood stuff, or whatever. And they see stuff around that, but there's so many things, big and little, that shift in the meantime when they don't have their eye on it. Like, we have a woman in our community. I think she went through the 6-week course maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. And there's an ongoing community. So after the 6-week course, you can be part of that forever. And we talk weekly and we have our own stuff. But so she's been around this for a little bit, I think maybe a year and a half. And she told us on our last call, she's like, I don't know what happened, but I don't make lists anymore. She said, it's the craziest thing. I used to be a frantic, obsessive list maker. I would have a list for everything. If my husband said we were out of milk, it instantly went on the list. Like, everything was about a list. And she didn't care about changing her list habit. Like, that was not on her radar. It didn't even look like a problem, right? But she's like, it's just the most fascinating thing. I'm just so responsive to life in a moment that I'm not running to the list all the time. I didn't even realize how much I did that until it fell away. On my podcast this week, there's a guy, amazing story, who he was I don't know the numbers right now, I can't remember, but he was drinking like, I want to say like 40 or 50 Diet Cokes every single day. He was just drinking so much Diet Coke. Really fascinating story about how that all started as well. He didn't even really see that as an issue. He was spending a ton of money on it, obviously. Wrecking is not great for his health. But he didn't see it as an issue. He came to the Little School of Big Change in the spring because he had some writer's block. He writes plays, and he felt like he was in his head around his writing, and he wanted to maybe see something that would quiet his mind so he could write better. Well, he comes into the school. He sees so much about his thinking and just all of that right away. The writer's block thing, that was on his mind, and that he had some insights around that, and that changed and got better. But what do you know? Like, the Diet Coke thing is just gone. It's just fallen away. He just really woke up to, oh my gosh, first of all, I didn't even realize I was reaching this much for this much Diet Coke all the time. And what a grip it kind of felt like it had on him. He was sort of blind to that. And he woke up to it. Then he began seeing things like, isn't this interesting? Like, these things started popping out of the woodwork at him. Like, isn't it interesting? I feel a little uncomfortable, or I have to go to work and I don't want to, or someone asks me a hard question, and my mind goes to grab a Diet Coke. Like, he really started to see how his mind's been leading him toward this for years. But that's the thing, is like, we're blind to it until we're not. And that's true with so many things, and And it's not a bad thing. I mean, in some ways, it's some things it's kind of good. I think that we're sort of blind to it. It's our wisdom, right? We don't need to know everything that's going on in our heads. But but what happens is when people relax and they see more about who they really are, and they see that they aren't their experience, there's this space that grows. And in this bigger space, you notice things that you were like this to, blind to a minute ago or a month ago, right? So he's just going through life, reaching, grabbing, as many of us are, drinking whatever we're drinking, buying, eating, doing, yelling, being frustrated. It just looks like life. But as we slow down, as our mind slows down, and as we really get curious about who we are and what's in there beyond all of this, that stuff starts popping up, and we see it, we feel it, because your level of peace raises. I mean, it really goes through the roof. Your level of just feeling at home in your own body and in your own life, and just security and gratitude and just presence, and all of that goes through the roof. And what that means is when that happens, when something comes in that's not that, so a little worry, a little like nervous grab for something, whatever it is, you fantasizing about some horrible thing that might happen, when our feeling level is really high and really nice, anything that's not that pops out way more than it used to. So that's how we start to, we just call that insight. That's how we start to get onto this stuff. So it's really cool how that works. We know that we have things we want to see around and see differently around. Um, but there's all kinds of things that start to change. Often relationship things, stuff that we didn't realize were a little bit in the way in relationships and stuff like that. So very exciting. Okay. Oh, so good to see people here. So Sally, I think I emailed you back and hopefully helped a little bit, but you say about the Christian faith and the principles. Well, I know I emailed you back because I email everyone back, but hopefully my response was helpful, and you can let me know after this as well. I'll speak a little bit about that, to the difference. I think for me there's ginormous overlap, ginormous, and only in that, um, this understanding that the Little School of Big Change points to, the understanding of the three principles, it looks at kind of this description of who we are beyond our psychology. So beyond a mind, beyond a brain, beyond our habitual repetitive psychology, beyond our experience, so beyond our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, that's all the very humanness of us, right? That's superhuman, not superhuman, but very human. That's our humanity. Amazing. That's what psychology deals in. That's what we look at here as well. Um, but we're really looking at the psychology and how our mind works with the purpose of seeing it in a way that has us less tied up in it, so that we feel free, and we naturally start to kind of fall more into who we really are. So we naturally, when we're less looking at our thoughts and feelings and all of that, we're less caught up in our experience, we just kind of relax into a bigger presence, a bigger sense of who we are. And I would call that spiritual. But, words are just words. I think everything's spiritual. But a lot of people would kind of say, oh, that's like our spiritual self, or our essence, or what's there, beyond our head. And in that, there's a lot of good. So, like, we're made of love, and we're made of clarity, and we naturally are connected to all people, and we're naturally full of gratitude beyond all of this thinking. And that's where we look, and that's what I think. And again, I'm not just talking about Christian faith, because that's kind of a set maybe of more beliefs, but I'm talking about sort of Christian faith, or all faiths, kind of religion in general. I think that's also what religion does for a lot of people. It points us away from our me-ness. Doesn't dismiss it. It's wonderful, but it helps us look beyond it, right? It's something bigger, a bigger intelligence. Wow, what's really living me? Because I'm not doing this. These words are just coming out of my mouth. I'm not making them happen. That's it, So it points us to that biggerness, that biggerness, And people call that bigger spiritual energy God or spirit or whatever they want to call it. But to me, it's all the same thing. It's all exactly the same thing. So within specific religions, now you get different interpretations of things, right? You get this means that, and therefore, this was written, therefore, this is how we should act. We don't do that in the Little School of Big Change. I'm never going to tell you what to do or how to act or anything like that. We just stick with the bigger truth that kind of underlies it, knowing that the more that we as human beings see about who we truly are, that bigger essence that's living us, and the less we're caught up in our me experience, the better everything goes. Like, the richer our lives are, the more habits and anxieties just fall away, because none of those are natural. None of those are essential. They're not who we are. They're added. They're made of thought. So when we see through that, they start to change and go away. So if the concern for anyone is around, is this conflict or anything like that, it absolutely doesn't. Had many people of many religions come through the school and say over and over again how they can see, like, it deepens their beliefs in a lot of ways. They see the overlap and it deepens it, and so there's no judgment, no conflicts as far as I can see. Okay. Yay, I would love to have you, Sally. Okay, so Jag asks, is there more to the school? I hope you're okay, Jag, with me using your nickname that I'm using for you. Is there more to the school than is spoken on in the Changeable podcast? How is the content different? Excellent question. Yes. So the biggest difference is that, and I mentioned this really early on, and you can listen if you missed it, but the content in the school is a really well thought out and tested curriculum that walks people through, like me pretending like we're all brand new to this, and just kind of walking us through this understanding of who we are and how this experience thing works, step by step, and then with me guiding you and supporting you every step of the way. So if you were to listen to all 112 whatever episodes of Changeable, you're going to get a lot of that, right? You're going to see it, but it's not designed for that. I mean, a specific podcast episode is just on a little topic, and sure, lots and lots of listening over time, you're going to glean the big picture most likely, but it's a completely different experience to be walked through sort of step by step and to have the support. So the content, yes, the content is very different, because it's not like we have, the podcast will have a guest and then this topic and that topic. We talk about topics at times, but it's deeper than that in a sense. It really gives a solid foundation. It's a little bit like if you're learning a language, it's like going to a class. Like if you want to learn how to speak Spanish, it's like going to a class that teaches you the basics. We're all sitting here, no one knows Spanish. Let's learn how to speak Spanish, right? And be guided and supported through it, versus listening to a Spanish podcast or watching Spanish shows on TV, which is how a lot of people learn languages. You can do it that way, but it's a completely different creature. It's going to take a lot longer. It's not as direct. It's a really different thing. It's a good question. It's a good question, and it's a really common question. So people also ask about, same thing about like the book, like the Little Book of Big Change. That obviously started from a beginning and goes to an end, and there is some overlap for sure, but there's a lot that's not an overlap. I mean, the Little Book of Big Change obviously is really specific to habits and anxiety and other issues, and the school is to some extent. But we really, because we're together, because we're communicating, and I'm seeing what you want to hear more about, and I'm knowing what's going on, where people are stuck, and where they're just flying through it and seeing so much. It's responsive to that, and it goes much deeper because we can talk, and it's not just me writing 42,000 words. We just have the ability to go so much deeper with it. I will also say the little Book of Big Change, it's a good book, but I wrote it like 6 years ago. So again, get the book. It's a good book. I'm not trying to bash my own book. I'm just saying in 6 years, a lot has changed. A lot has changed in how I see things, my ability to kind of share this and help coach people through it so that they can have their own insights, stuff that you just can't do in a book and that I didn't even really see to do as well 6 years ago. There's a lot about right now that I kind of want to say. I think right now, more than any other time in the history of our lives, most likely, so much is going on, and I think there's just such a need, and maybe even a need that we don't realize at times, for seeing who we are and how our experience works. And so when I say a need that we don't realize, I know that a lot of really successful, resourceful, smart people are just kind of doing the best they can, making it through life. We're all still here. We're doing everything. We're moving with all the changes, making all the pivots, figuring everything out, taking it a day at a time, the best we can. And that's wonderful. It's great that we're all doing that. But there's also this way in which I think many of us, and I have a tendency to do this, we kind of are just like, well, I'm just doing what I need to do, right? I don't even know if I need help. I don't even know, like, we don't take a look back and see, oh my gosh, I really am under so much more stress. Now, sometimes we do. Sometimes it gets our attention because all of a sudden we're having panic attacks again, or all of a sudden our habits have cropped up, or all of a sudden we're just feeling really hopeless about the future, and we didn't feel that way 6 months ago. So often, and it is our design, we get feedback and we see that that's going on for us. But I also know from all the people I talk with all the time that there's a low level of just like nose to the grindstone. No one knows anything. Let's just power through. And I think a community like that, a community like this, a conversation like this, truly taking a look at our innate resilience, which I hate saying that because it sounds, I'm just selling it so short, like our innate health, our innate resilience. It sounds like such a keyword. It sounds like such a cliche phrase. I just can't tell you enough how knowing that you are okay, no matter what is happening, no matter where your mind is going, when your mind is obsessing about, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get back on the subway next week with my mask on and go back to my job at the school? How am I going to make all this work? Our mind is just reeling right now. What are the holidays going to look like? Our minds are just all over the place. And that's okay. That's going to happen. But oh my gosh, to know that to have that space I talked about earlier, just a tiny bit of space where it's like we're almost sitting here underwater, kind of looking up, and we can see, wow, there's a lot going on up there. There's a lot of wind, and there's waves, and there's storms, and there's this fight and that argument, and these social issues are a mess, and all of that. But from our place where we're like, it's a foot below the surface, and around us, it's really peaceful. Like, wow, yeah, there's a lot of crap going on up there. And I want to be in that world, right? I'm a human and I live in this world. But right here, look, I'm okay. And so I can kind of dip up and do what I need to do and know that I'm not being thrown around by all of this that's happening out in the world. That doesn't touch it either, but that's my best attempt in this moment to give you a little bit of a feel for what it feels like to really kind of see what's there beyond our thinking. And oh my gosh, do we need that now more than ever? So I just think it's such an incredible opportunity that you may not even realize how much you could benefit from it. Sometimes we just don't even see that. I mentioned that I lead the school twice a year, and so the last course started in the first week of March, and by the second week of March, third week of March, everything was different. And so that class, they call themselves the COVID class. They went through this as all of this was happening, and so many of them, I have them on video. I'm having it all kind of put together into a nice little video to share. So many of them have recorded statements about just how much this community and this understanding saved them during that time, just helped them so much. It's the understanding, first and foremost, no question, to see who we are and to see our resilience and to see how, of course, you want to just go fall into your habits, and of course, you want to numb, and of course, you want to argue, and of course, uncertainty feels hard. But all of that is psychology. None of that is who you are. So it's all very changeable. It's always changing, in fact, and who you are doesn't change. So the understanding, they said, helped them first and foremost. But the community, I mean, right now, again, we can't even go out and do things the way we want to. So the ability to have this forum and friends, they make close friends that they stay in touch with, and to just be in contact with other people, to be talking about what's going on and how they're seeing it and all of that is just priceless. And so that makes me very excited about this time. I think this fall course is going to be so special, and I don't think there's a better time to be doing this for all the reasons. That the course was designed initially thinking that it would help a lot of people with habits and anxiety and things like that, but what it deeply does beyond that is help us see that we're always changing and that change is not hard. And that means that when the world is changing and forcing change on us, we don't have to fight it. Like, it doesn't have to be hard. It will feel hard at times because we're human beings and our mind talks a lot and we're going to listen to it. So at times when our mind is saying, oh no, I don't know what's coming, we're going to suffer. But it doesn't have to be that way. And the more we see about how our mind does that, and that's what the suffering is about. Our suffering isn't about the world. It has nothing to do with what's happening out there. Our suffering is about the experience coming to life within us that looks and feels real, looks and feels personal. So when we see that differently, we just navigate change and uncertainty and all that in a completely different way. Okay. If you have questions, okay, good. If you have questions and you're here, go ahead and share them. I'm going to look to a couple that were asked before, and I'll just speak to those. Okay, so one was a question around, and a few people asked a question along these lines of kind of what they can expect benefits-wise. So I kind of spoke to this a little bit, and honestly, this is probably the hardest question that anyone could ever ask, because it's hard and it's not. Like, I don't know what your benefits will be, right? And people have gotten so many benefits that are both what they came in for, meaning their habits fall away, their anxiety is no longer, that kind of stuff, and so many benefits beyond what they came in for that it's sort of hard to answer at times. But in terms of, if you're struggling with a habit or an addiction or anxiety or depression or something like that, I just want you to know that this isn't a conversation about a bunch of stuff to do. So there's nothing to do here. There's no, like I said earlier to Adrian, there's no homework. There's no, okay, here's how you're going to challenge yourself this week. Here's what you're going to do. There isn't that. There's a deep conversation about something that resonates with pretty much everyone that's in this conversation. It just resonates at a level of truth. And then there's us exploring it and just seeing. And it's almost like the more we do that, the more we see what we need. Like, things show up and clear up and look different within us. And those are the exact things that we need, whether they were the things we thought or not. So I try to collect as much data as I can, which is difficult at times, but I can say I have a survey that comes out each time after the school ends, and 97% of people who have gone through the Little School of Big Change say that many of them, again, coming in for habits or anxiety, say that what they learned in the 6 weeks put them on the path to deep and lasting change. So after the fact, they can look back and say, yes, what I saw in this course made a huge difference to change that actually lasted. And that part's really important, because again, if there's a bunch of steps, if there's a bunch of here's what you do for 6 weeks and then you're off on your own, I wouldn't expect much to stick. But that's not at all what this is. It's an understanding that shifts your view of life. It is a paradigm shift. it leaves you seeing yourself and your experience in a very different way. And so in that, like when you see life, when you see that, oh, the earth looks flat, but it's actually round, you don't tend to go back to thinking it's flat. You really do, oh my gosh, we were wrong. It actually works this way. That sticks with you. And that's how this is. You know, the things that we see about ourselves and about how life works from this conversation, from this understanding, they stick with you because they just do, because they're true, and it's a completely different paradigm. Now, that said, 6 weeks is not that long of a period of time, obviously, especially to be completely shifting our paradigms. So it's the beginning of something, and we feel these cracks in our foundation. I talk about this a lot. Like you feel things starting to shift from the bottom up, so that eventually things begin to just fall away. It's like we use the iceberg metaphor a lot. We're trying to like shift the base of the iceberg, and knowing that when that iceberg shifts enough, the whole thing's just going to crumble, rather than starting at the top of the iceberg and trying to beat your way down, which is what most of us are doing when we're out, you know, following the 10-step formula, or we're trying to behave our way to a different life. That's kind of the equivalent of us trying to beat the iceberg from the top down. We're taking the opposite approach. We're looking deep and seeing that things begin to shift as a result. So in 6 weeks, can I promise you that your habit will be completely gone? No, I don't know. Has it for a lot of people? Yes. Has it been largely gone and like people have had major insights and they're far less afraid of it? That's the norm. That's the norm. And then from there, though, your foundation is shifted. Like you cannot go back to seeing things the way you saw them before, and that's how the change lasts. That's how it's really deep and really lasting. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah, so Sally, hopefully that speaks to your question. Um, I don't even ask that, to be honest. I don't say, "Are you free of your habit?" because it doesn't really feel important. What feels important is are you seeing life differently? Because when you see life differently, your habit has no purpose. It wouldn't be around anymore. So, for example, if someone is binge eating, let's say, they get super caught up. They go into this behavior, like they kind of feel like they're just overtaken by their thoughts and feelings. They eat a bunch of food. They kind of wake up, meaning their thinking settles down after, and they think, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did it again. What's wrong with me?" All of that, and that's the cycle, right? What we look toward is what's going on for all people in all issues, panic attacks, binge eating, all of it. Who we are by nature, which is open and light and expansive and healthy, and it would never occur to you when you're feeling your best, it would never occur to you to go eat a bunch of food. That'd be horrible. There'd be no comfort in that. So we look there more and more, and that starts to rise within every person, within everyone. We all start to feel more peaceful and more like ourselves. And then we also start to see, what does it mean when all of a sudden I'm super tight and I'm running off to do my habit, or I'm in a panic attack or whatever. What is that showing me? And what it's showing us is that we're very caught up in our heads, that we're in the psychology, and it is so gripping and so real that we just can't see. The only thing we can see to do is to do our habit, is to, whatever it is that we do, to make it go away now because it looks scary and threatening and personal. When our paradigm shifts, so when all of that starts to change, when we fall more into who we really are and we're already feeling better, and then we notice a feeling, but we know what that feeling means, the whole thing, the whole experience of it just starts to shift. It would no longer make any sense, and it wouldn't bring you any comfort to fall into binge eating. Like, anyone who's not a binge eater at the moment would think, "Oh, that would hurt. I would hate to go eat a bunch of food." Now, when I was a binge eater, it didn't hurt at all. It was amazing. I hurt before, and then I did it to feel better, right? Same with drinking, same with so many of our habits and things. So our habits only are sticky and even have a positive, what we feel as a positive impact on us, when we're feeling so horrible that they numb us from that. They distract us from our horrible feeling. When that all changes, and that's what happens when we start to explore all this, it doesn't feel good anymore. Like if you're not a smoker, you would think a cigarette's disgusting. If you're not a binge eater, you'd think it's disgusting. And that's what starts to happen. So it's a long answer to your question, but it's not important to me, the behavior. We're not tracking behavior. We're not looking at oh, how many times and what'd you do. I don't care about that at all, because that's way downstream. Way downstream. It is not a focus on behavior. It's a focus on shifting your iceberg from the bottom up. It's a focus on you seeing life and yourself in a different way. And I know from thousands and thousands of people that when we have those paradigm shifts, the habits are gone. And we don't need willpower, we don't need the behavioral strategy. None of that makes any sense when we see things differently from the bottom up. So that's why what I care about and what I ask is, after people have been through the course, it's like, how do things look? How do you feel? How does your issue look to you now? I don't really care what they're doing, because what they're doing is just a byproduct of how life looks. Okay, so it was a good example I just randomly made up, Sally. Okay, let me see what other questions. Some have been answered. So the time commitment, I'll just mention it. I think I kind of mentioned it. It's about an hour of content, 3 hours of calls. And beyond that, it's completely up to you. People spend lots of hours sometimes on the forum, and we, get to know them very well, and that's wonderful. You can do that. Some people just do the bare minimum, and many people have things. Things come up. I get it, right? So again, nothing's being ripped away. So if you have a week even where you couldn't log in and you can't do things, you're not behind. You just catch up when you want to. So if you're staying on course with everyone, it's about 4.5 hours a week, but you can do that however it works for you. Yeah, so 2 more questions I had. And again, if you guys are here, if you have questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat, I guess it's not a chat, leave a comment and I'll speak to them. One is around how this can help, and I think I spoke to this. One is around how this can help me during COVID related stuff, and uncertainty in particular, how uncertainty, this person said, brings so much worry, so much anxiety, and how can this help with that? And I just, to that, would say, uncertainty doesn't bring worry and anxiety. It looks like it does, because our mind starts going, what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. Oh my gosh, what if this happens? What if that happens? And before we know it, we're anxious. We're feeling anxious. So it looks like uncertainty did that, but where we want to look is like that's a mind just racing and then us getting caught up in it. It has nothing to do with uncertainty, because life has always been uncertain. There's no more uncertainty now. In the big picture, there's no more uncertainty now than there ever was. We never knew what was going to happen tomorrow. We never will know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's just that lately it's been brought to our attention that we don't know. And so our minds have decided to worry about it. That's it. So absolutely, I know it looks like, again, things happening in the world, our mind goes nuts, but where this is so incredibly helpful is just helping us see that difference, helping us see, who am I? What's there beyond all of this worry and chatter and wondering? And then how does this work? Every single brain on earth works in the same way. Brains interpret things, they make up stories, they connect dots, and they're largely inaccurate. This is known. This is all kinds of science, right? Looking at the fact that our brain will give an explanation. Your brain will say, oh, I did this because X, Y, and Z. And that's not. Your brain's just trying to give you a coherent story. So the reasons, the theories, the interpretations, all of that, everyone's brain is doing it. We need it. It's a good thing. It helps us make our way through the world. But they're not the solid truth. They're an interpretation. They're a machine's take on things in a given moment. So the less we start to hang on that and take it as truth, the more we can just hear our mind going through whatever it goes through. But again, we're grounded in who we really are. We're grounded in something so much deeper. So we're just not as swayed by that. We're not as affected by it. So there's lots of, I can answer that question in a million ways, why this is helpful in COVID times. And I did in some ways. So hopefully that's helpful. The other question is just about pre-enrolling, because the school starts, all the action starts on September 28th. And so people were asking like, well, why pre-enroll, right? So pre-enrolling does a couple things. One, quite importantly, it saves your seat. Make sure that you have a seat available in the course, because again, it's only taught twice a year. You also save $47 on enrollment, so that's a pretty big perk. So enrollment in the Little School of Big Change, again, this is for all the support, lifetime access to everything, is normally $497. And if you pre-enroll, it's $450. Is that math right? Yeah, you save $47 basically if you pre-enroll. And pre-enrolling means enrolling before the 28th. So on the 28th is when everything opens up and the forms hop in and everyone's meeting each other. If you pre-enroll before the 28th, you are guaranteed a seat, and you save the $47. Also, you get access to our free member classroom, which has all kinds of stuff. So you don't have to wait until the 28th. You get my book Being Human. You get the changeable podcast tour. So it's like a curated kind of like, listen to this episode, think about this, listen to that episode. It walks you through some of the episodes in Changeable, and it kind of makes that its own little mini course. It's really pretty cool. It's a cool experience. You get an Ask Amy guide. You get a talk I did actually last summer, a 1-hour talk on habits and anxiety. So you get all kinds of materials and resources as soon as you pre-enroll, so that you can kind of get your change rolling right away. And there's something less tangible but worth mentioning about pre-enrolling, and that is something that I know people like myself and people in the helpers and people in the change field see all the time, and that's that we can sit around and kind of think, oh, I wonder if change is possible, and I wonder if I'll do anything, and all of that, and we're kind of sitting around wondering, and something happens. Something tends to shift for people when they kind of sign up. You'll hear it everywhere, but there's a weird like sign up thing that happens, when you kind of say, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to spend 6 weeks with some amazing people looking in a totally different direction. I'm going to let my paradigm completely blow up and be open to it shifting. I don't know. It's like we're already starting the process. And again, you have some resources and stuff from me that help you start the process right away. So if you're thinking about it, it just makes sense to kind of get in, save your seat, and get the ball rolling ASAP. Okay, Sally has another question about trouble sleeping. Yes, a lot of people, oh my gosh, I never realized so many people have sleep issues, and it comes up all the time in the school. Do you find that once people learn to quiet their racing brains, they can sleep better? No question. No question. And it's not even about learning to quiet your racing brain. I don't mean to like harp on the words. I know they're just words, but it's important. It's not that we learn to quiet anything. It's that we just become less bothered by it, less interested. And as we become less interested and less bothered by it, it just quiets. So you may have noticed you can have nights, I've had these many, right, where you're middle of the night and you're watching the clock and you're so upset and I can't sleep and what am I going to feel like tomorrow, and right? And what happens? Your adrenaline is going through the roof and you're like more and more awake than ever. And you're just suffering because you're sitting there awake anyway, but telling yourself you shouldn't be awake. And it's a horrible feeling, a horrible experience. And there may have been other times, hopefully you've had some of these as well, where you're up in the middle of the night, can't sleep, but you don't really care. Maybe you listen to a podcast, or you just lay there and think, or you're just okay about it. Your mind's not making up stories about what tomorrow's going to feel like. And in that, I think if we looked at it, for sure, people fall asleep more quickly that way, but it's not even about falling back asleep. It's like you're not suffering. There's no problem. There's no problem there. There's no suffering. And a lot of people that have insomnia issues find so much in the school, or like in this conversation, we talk about it in our community a lot, around the piece of like how we tend to think we know exactly how we're going to feel. We think if I get this many hours, I'm good. If I get fewer hours than that, I'm a wreck. And understand, like, innocently, we kind of create those conditions for ourselves because that's how we expect to feel. The next day you're checking, how do I feel, and is my eating off, or am I, like, we just have all these theories about how we're going to feel, and it's completely coming from our heads. It's coming from our expectations and our thoughts. It's not reality. So I always tell the story that I used to have a lot of those, and then the night before my wedding, the biggest day of my life to that point, I got like 3 hours of sleep. And it was the best day of my life. And I literally, the entire day of my wedding, didn't feel tired one bit. Not once did I think I'm tired. And that really showed me something like, wow, look at that. Clearly, from a different state of mind, it's not because it was a wedding, it's just from a different state of mind. I could get 3 hours of sleep and feel amazing. What does that show me about all these theories I have about sleep? And I see that all the time now, and people talk about that a lot. So it's a really cool side effect. But yes, it for sure helps as your mind quiets. Okay, wow, this is almost an hour long. All right, well, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for past students who spoke up and said how much they love the school. I can't wait. I know it's still a month away, but I just wanted to do this Q&A now because I'm so excited, and I just feel like this time more than ever is going to help so many people. And it's an amazing time to be in a community of loving people looking toward how change works. There's no better time. So I really would love to see you in the school. If you have any questions at all, um, send me a message on Facebook, or better yet, email me because I get those a lot faster. I'll put my email in the comments here, and I'll do some more of these. And if you're on my newsletter list, that'll help you know exactly what's coming and what's going on with the school launch. But yeah, I'm so excited. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks for your questions, and I hope to see you in class in September. Bye, everyone.